I had too many things going. I was still, and my wife got sick, and I did let some things go. And I said, hey, it doesn't need me. Joe was born here. He knows what's happening. He well enough to care. And Charles Jackson and I just like that. So it was time that he and I make presentations to different places. He was there also when I made my presentation to the Historical Society about mine was growing up in South Florida.
So do me a favor, since I did just start the video, just kind of quickly introduce yourself.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay, okay.
And then I want to see what you have.
Hear what I got in, I'll share this with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Eugene Johnson. I'm the grandson of John Stone, who's one of the early settlers of Melbourne. And I today have a desire to share with you some of the things that in my lifetime and growing up that I saw occur in Melbourne. And more expressly, I was concerned about the businesses, because no one focused on businesses if there were never anything, but there had to be businesses as well for people to survive on.
Yeah.
So, but let me just give you a ground floor.
Okay.
To put your feet on it as we listen to what I want to say here.
All right.
It was the Civil War Homestead Act of 1866, which awarded land to former slaves. It was that act that brought Peter Wright brothers, and Billy Allen, and other black families to Melbourne, then called Crane Creek. Melbourne first was known as Crane Creek. Peter Wright.
Do you know why it was called Crane Creek? Or is it just?
Because that creek back there is the name of that creek itself. Mm-hmm. And the people settle on the banks. And that's a lot of times wherever things to settle, towns take on that name.
Okay.
So it took on it as Crane Creek. But it was later named Melbourne, which can be talked about. It's another story from another perspective. Mm-hmm. But Peter Wright, original homestead, extended along the Indian River, which he later sold the northern section to a white settler, bought a sailboat, and became, not a sailboat, but he bought a boat. But it was a sailboat because there were no motors. I really could call it a sailboat. Mm. And became the first mail carrier within the area. He transferred mail up and down the Indian River from Titusville to St. Lucie County, which is Fort Pierce itself. Wright brothers, grandfather of John Wesley brothers, and W.R. brothers also came to Melbourne and acquired land along the Homestead Act, opening stores, trading with the Indians, and were living in that. There were Indians living in that area because as I grew up as a boy, they always came through a certain period of times and things that they were trading back and forth with the settlers. But in 1892, my grandfather, John Stone, came to Melbourne from Colorado, began to acquire and later married Mary Sears of cocoa. In the late 1890s and the early 1900s, the black population grew tremendously. The Cypress Creek Mill, where Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church now stands, was cutting timber, and the Florida East Coast Railroad was laying tracks from Jacksonville to Miami. Both of these provided work, which caused my grandfather on the other side, Isaac Johnson, to come and migrate from Madison, Florida. He bought some land from Washington Gray, went back to Madison, Florida, brought his family, which includes my mother. During the same time frame, many black families moved to Melbourne to establish a new lifestyle. The black community, or then looked upon as the colored community, was located south of Crane Creek, all the way to Florida Avenue, which is Newtown, now close to West Palm Bay.
So they called it Newtown, huh?
Yeah, it was that time. Matter of fact, Florida Avenue was a point where it stopped. All that behind it was Newtown. Melbourne, and then it was Newtown itself, which is considered some of Melbourne now, and other parts of it is Palm Bay itself. It extended from the railroad to Grand Street West. Of course, Sugar Hill, where Charles Jackson Electric Store now stands on US 1, was also a part of the black community. The men that lived within the described area worked at the sawmill, East Coast Railroad. And the wives of these men took in washing and ironing to supply their family's income. They also attended the local churches. You got to realize one thing, that when we go...
What years are we talking about? Do you know what years?
I'll give it, the local churches have been built, Allen Chapel, Macedonia, and Scott's Chapel. I'll give you those dates on them as I talk about the churches, the independent themselves.
Okay.
In 1883, that was the Little Red Schoolhouse that was built. Both black and white children attended the school. There were 2 sessions per day. The white children went to school in the morning, and the black children went to school in the afternoon session. The building is now located, it still stands on Florida Institute in Melbourne, on that campus. But as more black families arrived and the area grew, gradually, small black businesses began. I want to share with you some of the businesses because there's a necessity for businesses if a town is going to grow. From around the early 1920s up to 1950s, I want to give you an ear for some of the businesses that did flourish and did grow. Some have passed on, some still there. Many of these businesses were born out of necessity, in most cases part-time, but as the population grew, so did the business. Let me first share with you businesses established in the 1920s and in the 30s time frame. One of the first was the Stone Land Company, as I said before, by John S. Stone, my grandfather, but in 1895. You'll find also the Stone subdivision is so located and so stated, and you can see it and find it in the plat book in the city, in the county tax department. Many of the properties itself that established today is located under that plat book as the Stone subdivision. There were boarding houses, I guess what you would call today a young hotel. But there were Mrs. Dart, Mrs. Mary Piper, Mother Hankins, Ella Moses, and Nathaniel Knight. These people had boarding houses that people lived in when they came here, the businesses that they established. There were grocery stores. John Stone, my grandfather, as and Wright brothers, and others established grocery stores in the early 20s. And of course, there were need for the midwife. My grandmother, Mary Stone, Anita Harris, Lydia Duncan, Estella Jackson, and Lucilla Pittman, all midwives. And we talk about the churches, the early churches, as I said before. Allen Chapel, 1885 was born. Macedonia, which grew out of Allen Chapel, came on later on and it grew. Then there was the Church of God in Christ. And of course, Scott's Chapel, which was another name tree, which was later known and called Stone's Church because most of the people from the Stone family went to that church. Then there was a funeral home that was necessary. Stone Funeral Home, from my uncle Richard Stone, 1923, it had its birth. And it still stands today with businesses in Melbourne, Cocoa, Titusville, and you find in Melbourne, real strong. Then the Melbourne Vocational School. In 1906, grade 1 through 8 was established. It was a one-room land donated, and the land was donated by John Stone once again to the family. And another important business that still stands today, Tucker Plumbing. Newman Tucker, 1934, his son, still today, one of his sons still runs the business in the 3rd, 4th generation. Funeral service, like I say, also that was J.K. Gramlin, who was Sister Stone, who had in his funeral directory, had his funeral home here in the Melbourne area, but more especially, it grew out of Stone Funeral Home. Then carpentry, there's many black carpenters. Reverend Patrick Henry and Washington Gray were one of the 2 noted black carpenters here in the community itself. Also, Reverend Arthur Albert. You're wondering why, as preachers, so forth, were the carpenters.
Right.
Because they had this thing that Jesus Christ was a carpenter.
That's right.
That's why they should be carpenters.
That's right.
So they were carpenters. A lot of people never realize that. That's was an honorable thing that they say, hey, And that's why they were and became carpenters. And of course, so many laundries, people doing laundry for people in the area. Mrs. Mary Lawrence came to Melbourne in 1900, paid $2 for 4 lots, and she died at the age of 110. The family plot right across the street from Allen Chapel today. Then there was the ice delivery. We had an ice house, and there was a black iceman. Then Clyde Jackson used to ride around his old truck and bring 100 pounds, 25 pounds, or 50 pounds, whatever you wanted. He could take his ice pick and chop it up for you. And of course, we used ice to keep things cool, and there was a water drip out. We didn't have the modern ice boxes today, but we did have an ice box at that time to keep things cool. In the early 40s, a few businesses established also in another capacity. There were seamstresses. There's Emma Perry, Gussie Raines, Selma Howard. These were people that were doing the building and the sewing and the washing. Whatever was needed, there was someone to do it, and they established the business. Also, there were little restaurants, the Tea Garden Club, Nathaniel Knight, down in what they call the quarters. And the quarters itself was a business establishment down near Macedonia Baptist Church, which was an outgrowth of the mill. The men came in and lived in these little quarter huts, and had nightclubs there, and the Tea Garden itself was one of those early. But then there were cafes. Miss Reba Brooks, Miss Addie Edwards, Annie Lee, Miss Lena Chapman, Miss Lena Richardson. All of these people had cafes around Melbourne in that same area on Brothers Avenue, as well as, which is Jackson Street right now. It used to be Lion Street. Then there was a wood yard, Reverend Willie Price and George Thompson. They went out and cut lumber and brought in and sold yards of wood, because that's what people that cooked with it. They used it in this house as well as to heat their homes with. And they had the wood yard. Then there was a little relaxation, the fountainette. This little ice cream parlor that was built right across, adjacent across the street from Allen Chapel today. It was known as the Fountainette. This building still stands today. It was built by John Brothers, one of the brothers of the family of the brothers. Scrap iron collection. There were those that went around and picked up scrap iron. And they got a load of it. They would take it to Tampa. And needless to say, a lot of this iron was sent to build bombs and aircraft and other things that were used in the World War II. Then we had auto repair shops. Angus Johnson, no relation to me, and Willie Jackson, the two black men that built the two repair shops here in Melbourne to repair automobiles. Spain's Bar and Grill, Glennon's in Catherine, Spain. Right there on the corner today, there's still a white building on Stone Avenue, Stone Street right now. There's a big obsolete building there. There's nothing there. But that was Stone Bar. And in the early 1950s, people come from far and wide because they had this big dance. Every Monday night was a ball night. People come to visit. And it was a place to allow black people to interact with each other, not only from here in Melbourne area, but from other counties as well. Then, as I said before, the landscaping gardener, Harry Lawrence, one of the first black, I should say African Americans, to start his own landscaping garden. He was a member of Allen Chapel, and today there's a garden area over in Melbourne off Strawberries. It's named after Harry Lawrence, and they didn't forget what he once did in this community. There were grocery stores, Jesse Price, Charlie Bowman, Norman Coates, Eugene, and Ernest Thomas. Then there was a pool hall that was built by Ellis Richardson right down from, and Gunner Spain, 2 pool halls. And then nightclubs were established. Then there also was a movie house, born on Harry Lawrence. Harry Carey and Glenn Spain run this movie house. Then there was the Blue Flame Club. Brother Holder was the name of the man that ran the Blue Flame. Out there right now, the Blue Flame stands where not too far from our lodge, right down the street on the corner before you turn that building is now was known as the Blue Flame.
Really?
That was the Cannonball out farther in the 50-50 Club by Earl Jackson. Flamingo Club right there in Stone Street by Virgil Clark. She had built the Flamingo Club. The building still stands today. Then, of course, that was the Sawdust Trail, where today stands not Allen Chapel. Stands. It's a church there now. Stone Church. Stone is known as Stone, but I can't call it a name right now.
Okay.
But today, that Sawdust Trail is a church and and of course, right down the line is down the street is the Masonic Lodge, which Reverend Horace G. McMillan, H.G. McMillan, I will never forget his favorite thing to young people trying to learn, ask them questions. He would ask us, where was Moses when the lights went out? And we'd be trying to understand, research, and come back and say, well, we don't know where he was. He would say he was in the dark, young man. He was in the dark. I would never forget this from Reverend H.G. McMillan. Our first, one of our worship masters, past masters at that Masonic Lodge. Then you had the barbershop there, Ben Horn, Jimmy Davis, Eddie Dixon. Then our first black police officer, J.R. Rowland, then later to become on Foster Thayer. Then we had shoe shops, Jackie Ford, Alex Bryant. Those people had an actual little building, and they had a machine to take care of the building and the repair of the machine. Then they had the stone cutters, the building that my grandfather on the other side, Isaac Johnson, built little pots and different stone relics that was placed in the gravesite or monuments around your house for flowers. Then there was insurance man, Deacon Arthur Edwards, Norman Coates, established Atlanta Life, W.C. Stafford. Then the American Legion has building beginning by Reverend Max Againi, an ex-military man who came back from World War II and wanted to establish at the now 191 American Legion post. Then, of course, Miss Minnie Seeley, our kindergarten teacher. And that was a rolling fish market by Reverend Willie Bird. If he'd catch him, he'd bring him around through the town singing, selling the fish straight. Then the South Brevard Branch Civic League, young men, Norman Coates, H.G. McMillan, Harry Lawrence, Deacon Anderson Reddick, Reverend John W. Taylor, my grandfather Isaac Johnson, and others who were part of the political civic league action. They then were the political aspect of what was happening in the community itself. Then, of course, in our young black basketball team, the Melbourne Braves. And all these things that occurred as the growth of the community took power. Then in the early 1950s, dry cleaners by Willie Douglas, Leo Lewis, Joe McNeil's father, who, you know, Joe McNeil, he leads this organization in the community today, but his father was a leader. But the reason Joe McNeil himself has become involved in this community. Then, of course, Charles Jackson, who we all know, owns Jackson Electric, has been a phenomenal leader in this community. Him and his brother, Reverend Jackson. And that was Bunner Jackson who established the Twin City Plumbing, which was sitting right here in Indian Harbor Beach. The building is still right down there now on South Patrick Drive. Then the Piper Cafe by Samuel Piper. Landscaping by, once again, Deacon Reddick, Clarence Williams, Isaac Johnson, Harry Lawrence. Then early on there was the ice cream parlor. Then Jackson Realtor. Then the Guys and Dolls, which is one of the nicer clubs that we had, which stands today. And Reba and Belton Rooks established it. Then we had the little Gypsy Tea Room, the Harlem Beach, the Harlem Drive-In, many, many, many other organizations. In the 1950s, also our first medical doctor, Dr. Norman, came to this area, Dr. Norris, not Norman, Dr. Norris. And at that period of time, I was preparing to graduate from high school. And when I left in 1951 and came back in 1970s, a great monumental change taking place. But those were things that grew here in Melbourne itself. And they started in our early 20s, 30s, and 40s. And as a boy growing up, I had an opportunity to be aware of them and was proud to see them grow. Sorry to see them die, but some of them had to go but they were part of the building of this community. So as we talk about Melbourne itself and its growth in South Brevard, it has a great history. And I'm glad to have been a part of that history and to grew up in it and share it with those that asked about it. So right now,
So Mr. Johnson, first off, thank you, sir. Thank you for taking time out to just allow me to, interact with you about some of the business in that Melbourne area. So what year were you born, sir?
32.
1932.
Matter of fact, I will be 90 years old in 4 months.
90 years old, still looking good. You see all that hair? Still got a head for that.
Well, okay.
Now, what year did you?
I left here. I graduated 1950 at the class from Melbourne High School in 1950.
Okay.
Went off to college there to FAMU. But after being there, I decided I wanted to see some of the world. I had a scholarship too, but I was born in a small place. I wanted to see some of the world, see what other things were doing. I went into the Air Force, and I retired in 1971 at Patrick Air Force Base. I came back here and established the Defense Race Relations Institute.
Right.
That's how I came back. Mm-hmm. And I've given it 15 more years. I retired again, and did nothing but interact with my community.
So my question is, you mentioned it. You mentioned something about the monumental change. How would you describe that monumental change, and what happened to the businesses? Because you gave a very extensive list. So what do you think happened?
Well, one of the things that really occurred was, I won't call it integration, desegregation. It came about, and as it did, it affected us because not did we integrate into did they integrate into our societies and our activity. We had to, and we did, desegregate and integrate into what they had built. Matter of fact, we lost our schools. We lost our principals. All our principals became later on, if they stayed on, were advisors or became in different schools, just teachers. We lost all of those things that we had established. So I often say that I've never accepted that we desegregated, because everything that we have, it don't exist anymore. It's going out the window. The schools, when the principals took over from other schools, and our history was just there. So if it wasn't taken out by someone in the black community to absorb it, it was just thrown away, forgotten about. In time, things just passed. Always someone come with it and say, "Oh, that's some stuff that's been there from time to time. Do you use it? No, let's get rid of it." So by the desegregation, our ability to go and do other things, we sort of forgot where we came from and moved on into other things.
Yeah.
Some people did.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm glad you said that, because I talk about that sometimes, because what we really kind of lost was our self-sufficiency model. We lost some of our independence, and we didn't understand how to be interdependent. And so a lot of what we had before, we kind of left it behind for whatever reason. So
we kind of had no place to take it because we weren't in charge of the ones making the move. And it was so established by somebody else where we would go, what we would do. And a lot of us wanted to move on to see things a little greater, and we sometimes forgot that we got to continue to work in our own community. We put too much someplace else sometimes and didn't continue to help our own brothers and sisters.
And I would imagine that is definitely a part of it, but I would also have to say there's probably another part that we really make. What could we have done as far as making our businesses stronger or better too?
We could have put more into it. We could have stayed close, stronger with them. We should continue to
support one another.
We stopped supporting. We were so glad to see something. Otherwise, and thought sure that that was going to be the thing. And like I used to tell the people when they would, and children go to school, I say, you need to go to school with your children as well, so you know what they're learning. Because when we were in the black schools itself, you were part of the school system. You were there at the nights that they had family night, students night. But we sort of so glad to see something we thought it was going to be what would carry us on. We stopped supporting that which brought us where we were, and we put our support in the wrong place and forgot those which we had come from, and it just died because there was no support. So we took it someplace else.
So with that in mind, one of the reasons why I'm here is because I would like to, and I don't. Hopefully, other folks will agree, sort of a revitalization of what used to be. You know, so what do you think about that as a concept?
That's true, but it takes a lot to do that. But we can't. All of us have got to continue to do things that we used to do. We can't resign ourselves to, okay, I'm retired, I'm not going to do anything more. When you retire, that's when you really have to do your most for some other direction. Because if you don't, all that history and knowledge that you have, you've got to share continuously. I always say to our retired educators, we've got to still tutor young children. How many of our young children really know where we come from? They don't know at all. If you don't know where you come from.
And we're waiting on somebody else to tell that story. When we need to be telling the story. Right.
If you don't,
we need to tell and live
it.
Right.
And they will tell it in a different manner from how you told it. You've got to be your story, not their story. And you've got to tell it right.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I wonder about this sometimes, because I think about stuff like Black Wall Street and other things where there actually were massacres.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and did any of that happen here as part of that desegregation that you know of?
Not in this particular city right here, but it occurred around us.
In other places in Florida.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right
up the street.
Right up in Jacksonville there.
Yeah.
It happened somewhere. In Orlando, or Coy right over here. In Orlando had the same.
And even Harry T. Moore, yes, and what they went through.
Well, it was the education thing, and he was trying to make sure and do the things to ensure that we didn't lose our aspect of the educational part of it. He was trying to get the same pay for the black teachers as the white teachers. He was for that reason, and he gave up his life for it. You have to sometimes. To gain something, you have to give up something. It's hard sometimes. And most of us don't want to give up anything, but we want somebody else to give it up for us and say, yes, we did this. But you have got to do it yourself. And that's what Harry T. Moore was, and others, not only he.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, in the NAACP, for an example, one of our presidents of the NAACP had to give up his presidency because his wife was a teacher, and she was feeling the brunt of what was happening to her. As a matter of fact, lost her job because he was the NAACP president. You know, he didn't believe it because the NAACP was trying to do the things to help, trying to be the voice of the black community.
Right.
That's what it is, the voice of the black community.
Yeah. So back to revitalization of that Crane Creek area. I know they're doing something with the Crane Creek founders, the monument.
Yeah, they're going to put a monument up there for those Wright brothers that I was talking about a few moments ago. Those super. Yeah.
So what other kind of things? I've asked around a little bit. I'm military, brought me here in 2010, and I get involved in the communities wherever I go, just because I love our people. I love to try to, because I believe that change is possible, right? So what other kind of things would you like to see, or do you think it's possible in revitalizing that whole Crane Creek or Newtown area?
Well, it's in the move now. We just got to be a part of it from the community. It's been building, like right across there from Grand Street right now, the apartment complex, all of that area being built. That's a part of the thing that we've got to be a part of it. All the stores, the things going, that can't be all one color. You see what I'm saying? We've got to have the same kind of businesses that go into those businesses that I talked about that died. They need to be a part of some of those complexes when they go up.
Right.
as well as somebody that don't look like us.
Right. Right.
That's what we got to do. We can do this. Otherwise, it becomes somebody else, and all of the money taken out of there goes someplace else.
Gentrification.
Those same people don't live there.
Right.
So we have got to, once something is being done, we've got to start from the ground floor, then actually get our part as well of the package. We've got to put our barbershops in there. We got to put our restaurants in there. We got to put our businesses in there to help young people come in for interviews with job market, those kind of things.
Absolutely. So why do you think that there are no businesses? Even we know the monumental shift and what happened, but why do you feel like there are no businesses have come back? More businesses have not come back into the community. What factors you think are have hindered that?
Well, there hadn't been a place for it to begin with. It's just getting that start with all of these new buildings that are taking place. It's been sitting dormant almost. Like I can almost say, when I left in the 50s and I come back in the 70s, some of the same houses, the same things were still there. There was no growth, so the same lots empty. There's nothing there. We got to build with something that's going to be positive for the community.
Okay, so we need to put a plan together.
We have got to be a part of what goes on.
That's right.
We have to go to every meeting. It's just like that down in the city hall sometimes.
And we gotta coalesce some of our business people or people who have history like yourself or people who have resources and show them how if they make an investment and how they can get a return and how that investment can help to empower our communities and we can sort of control the growth.
We have just got to put ourselves into that. We can never retire. Once you retire from one thing, you've got to be over here doing something else. That's what I spent time. From the time when I left the Army, I was on the board of trustees at BCC. I was chairman of the board of trustees for 10 years. Then I was on the board of directors for the hospital, Woodstock. You've got to be active. More than one person. You can't.
One person can't do it.
People. Sometimes you hear this. You say, everywhere I go, I see you. And the thing I say, I go because I don't see nobody else there. Somebody got to be there. We have got to be there and represent. We can't and then when it's built and it's already, they say, well, we don't have nothing. No, you are not part of the foundation to be in there to say, hey, we need to do this. We must do this. And show it by force, not just when it's something you want to be done. You need to go down there and doing things you don't have no idea about. So you know what the 10-year plan is.
Right.
So you can say, hey, what do you say you're going to do what in 10 years on that area over there? Well, let me just, maybe more people than myself need to be talking about this.
So do you feel like there's a return in value for that effort? Because a lot of times people are like, with them, what's in it for me?
Well, that's the wrong thing. If you have the whipping act, that's terrible. You don't ever need to go into what is in it for me. But basically, that's what drives a lot of things. Unfortunately, crooked politics drives that. What's in it for me? It is difficult. So to ensure that don't happen, you've got to be there too. Charles Jackson gonna wear himself out.
Yeah, I talked to him today. He said he's been on the board for about 40 plus years.
Yeah, and Jerry Phillips down in the Macedonia our church and doing the same thing. We're building homes in the community for low class.
Yeah, low income.
Low income, yeah.
Macedonia underserved.
Yeah. I'm a part of the community development for Macedonia, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
And more people have got to do that.
Right. Okay.
But they look at it as just a few, and they all want to stay home. They say, every time I look, I see you. Then it makes you mad in one perspective, and then you want to say, doggone it, I wouldn't be here if some of you would come home so I could stay home. Matter of fact, I used to take my wife with me rather than leave her home to things that I wanted to be a part of, because I didn't want to leave her, but it was important that I be there. But just up until lately, and she passed, and of course, I'm getting weary. I can't
do it. Yeah.
Can't do what I want to, and I don't try to.
Okay.
Everybody now told them, hey, Johnson's give it up.
Okay.
It's up to my daughter and others to do it.
Okay. Well, sir, again, I just want to thank you for the time. You shared a lot of information. I hope that this video, that I know I'm going to try to capture this and you kind of hear some of the conversations that we're trying to have and just try to really figure out what can be done, what will we do, and see what kind of gains we can make. So, you got any final things you would like to say, Mr. Johnson?
That our young people need to know our history, and our young people need to become a part of what's going on as they grow. They need the background to ensure that we don't go through another area of time where it's all negative. They've got to give early in life and not wait on somebody else. It's up to you, up to us. We must continue.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you.